Among the most pleasantly surprising things I've read is Blue Archive, a gacha game which tackles the complex ideas of what makes someone evil. My favorite arc in the game is the Eden Treaty, a story about its characters tearing each other apart through war and politics. This hatred causes characters to manipulate, backstab, and betray each other at every turn, only for those feelings to be taken advantage of by manipulative adults. In the story, Hifumi acts as a ray of hope. She's someone who sees the good in absolutely everyone, fighting tooth and nail to give her classmates the happy ending they deserve. The protagonist, Sensei, agrees with this philosophy. Kids and teenagers make mistakes after all. It's his responsibility to forgive them and forge a path for their redemption. Many things make the Eden Treaty arc one of my favorite stories ever written, but the thing I love most about it is how bold its thesis truly is. Humans are good by nature. Takopi's Original Sin is an extremely dark and dramatic thriller, one which showcases the worst sides of human psychology. One may think that its child cast is merely a vehicle for shock value, but it's extremely important to showcasing its main themes. All three of the main characters suffer abuse from their parents. Shizuka is fatherless with an absent mother. Her only friend is her dog. Marina suffers through the arguing of her parents' collapsing marriage. Her father is having an affair with Shizuka's sex-working mother. Azuma, meanwhile, lives in a seemingly normal home with a seemingly normal family. Unfortunately for him, he faces sky-high expectations from his mother in order to keep their family business afloat. In the story, all three of them do terrible things. Marina relentlessly bullies Shizuka. She may be powerless to solve her family drama, but she can exercise power through crushing the spirit of the perpetrator's daughter. It doesn't matter that Shizuka has nothing to do with it. It doesn't even matter that Shizuka's mother is doing it for the paycheck as opposed to any ill will. What matters to Marina is that she used to have a happy family, that she used to have a loving father, and now that's gone. After all, she's a child. She can't understand such complicated subject matter. That's where Takopi comes in. Takopi may be the protagonist, but acts more as an observer. He's an alien which aims to bring happiness to every planet, but does so without understanding the nuances of human psychology. He very quickly latches on to Shizuka. As Shizuka isn't smiling because of Marina's bullying, it becomes Takopi's goal to stop it. Most of his solutions are shallow, however. They opt to achieve a happy ending without the work that's needed to make one possible. However, all of it completely falls apart once Takopi accidentally kills Marina. This is a shocking turning point, because it reveals Takopi's darkness. When Marina's revealed to be dead, Shizuka smiles, knowing that her suffering's finally over. Takopi sees that smile as a sign of success, and not one of deep concern. This is the critical moment where Shizuka goes from having a more sympathetic role to a near antagonistic one. This shakeup heavily messes with Azuma's head. He's a genuinely good kid who's always wanted to help Shizuka, but never found the guts to. He's a boy shaped by the high expectations that his mother places upon him. The reason he has a crush on Shizuka is because her pitiful predicament can make him feel useful to someone for the first time in his life. With that established, it makes sense how this jaded version of her begins to manipulate that love. When Azuma opens up about the jealousy he feels toward his brother, Shizuka attempts to break them apart.
なあ、大丈夫か？やっぱなんか思い詰めてるだろ。だからちゃんと相談しろって。何でも聞くから。
Azuma is important, however, because he's the one person who doesn't need Takopi's help. The reason why Azuma is able to escape this burden, while Shizuka and Marina are not, is because he has someone who's willing to listen to him. His brother may not have any advice, but he's able to understand what he's going through. Ultimately, it's that shared sense of understanding that holds siblings together through their trauma, and it's what allows Ozma to overcome his deep-rooted fear of never being good enough. His mother may never understand, but his brother will. While the title drops with Takopi's slaughter of Marina, I don't think it's the scene which has earned the show that title. Before Takopi met Shizuka, his first attempt to serve humanity took place 6 years in the future. In this timeline, Marina is now in high school. After the relentless bullying she's dished out in her childhood, she's been humbled down to earth. Over the years, her parents' conflict further escalated, leading to more direct abuse from her mother. In this timeline, we see a much more sympathetic version of her. Despite all the bad she's faced and all the bad that she's committed, she still wants to give to this world. She wants to be a mother. It's a heartwarming goal, which humanizes her character, but it's not a realistic one. Ozma, not having overcome his trauma in this timeline, dates her to distract from his pain. However, when Shizuka reappears, Marina is left all alone once again. When she's forced to kill her mother in self-defense, she gives Takopi her first wish: kill Shizuka. That way, none of this would have had to happen. It's a tragic moment because of how it strips away all the good we began to see in her. Takopi, not knowing how to actually solve this problem, commits his original sin. He takes her wish at face value. This is a relatively abridged version of the story that Takopi tells. With the exception of Ozma's character arc, Takopi is a story that's seemingly marred in a drought of hope. I mentioned earlier that the child cast is imperative to the story's themes, and it's because it directly addresses one of 2 ways that monsters are made. Unresolved trauma is what forms monsters. Marina's mother is shown in an abusive relationship with her husband. It is probable, based on the text, that she was abused in her childhood as well. This strife is what causes her to abuse Marina. Marina is someone who reenacts that abuse through Shizuka. Before the 3rd episode, Shizuka's trauma only manifested through her lonesomeness, an expected result of her upbringing. It isn't until after Marina's bullying and eventual death that Shizuka starts to act in a manipulative and homicidal way. While Marina becomes a monster due to her parental upbringing, Shizuka becomes one not only from that, but also from the bullying she received. This is a direct illustration of how this trauma feeds into more trauma. This is also why I don't believe the parental characters needed to be humanized in the same way that the children are, as the story is fairly heavy-handed with its implication that their parents faced similar traumas. Otherwise, you couldn't explain the terrible things that both Marina and Shizuka do. Despite how hopeless these characters may seem, it's directly because of how they become monsters that we can begin to find hope. However, hope doesn't exist in American Psycho. Patrick Bateman is a rich office worker in New York. He's attractive, shredded, and lives drowning in status, money, and women. Throughout the film, you hardly ever even see him working. He's the poster child for the dream that every American strives for. In that case, why does he feel so empty? As a result of having had everything handed to him in life, Bateman's one and only goal is to be remembered. Many scenes are dedicated to the shallow lives that his so-called friends live. There are entire scenes dedicated to something as stupid as waving around a business card like a giant cock. In this environment, everyone is an interchangeable cog in the machine, obsessed with flaunting their meaningless status over happiness. With this description, you'd think that Bateman is just like anyone else, but it's exactly because of his lack of hardship, his desire to be remembered for absolutely anything, that he's become a serial killer. Many look at Bateman through the surface-level lens of the American dream, choosing to admire his status as a Sigma male. American Psycho, however, is a critique of how our society worships the powerful. If money and status were truly as important as love and connection, then why would Bateman choose to kill? When making the argument that humanity is good, the existence of bad people has to be acknowledged. Persona 5 is very familiar with this concept. The villains of Persona 5 are all people who chose to succumb to the temptations of evil. Kamoshida blames the expectations placed upon him as an excuse for his physical and sexual abuse. Madarame blames the brutality of the creative world for his plagiarism. Kaneshiro blames capitalism for why he steals money from the weak. These villains all share one thing in common: their lack of accountability. Because the world is hard, they choose to take advantage of others instead of choosing what's right. This is a conflict unique to modern man, as hunter-gatherers had to stick by each other to survive. Therefore, anyone who would take advantage of the group would be exiled, as their wrongdoings would put the group in danger. When the modern world rewards the selfish desires of these villains, that's what ultimately makes them worthy of some form of justice. It's also the exact kind of world that its main villain wants. Shido is a man who wants nothing more than to become the Prime Minister of Japan. It's only through encouraging a world where people tear each other apart that he can rise to power. The Phantom Thieves, of course, stop this, but it comes at a cost. Before the Phantom Thieves steal someone's heart, all they do is make excuses. This is in stark contrast to when their heart is stolen, where they're practically begging for forgiveness. At the end of the game, every villain is seen inside of a cognitive prison, where change is made impossible. Instead of choosing to atone for their sins, they were instead forced into it, an inherent moral wrong. This is the moment that shows exactly why Shido took advantage of this power to kill others, and ultimately shows why humanity can't be given such a strong tool. Without the change of heart, however, how do we stop this corruption from distorting more people? American Psycho acknowledges the difficulty in this. Near the end of the film, Bateman finally gets caught for his crimes. When he manages to escape, he's in a state of shock so severe that he confesses everything to his lawyer. In the final scene of the film, his lawyer mistakes him for someone else. When Bateman continues his confession, it's treated as nothing more than a joke. American Psycho is a horror movie, but none of the scariest scenes are of his murders. The scariest scene is the one where he finds out that he can kill as many people as he wants, as long as he continues to be rich and powerful. Not only that, but nobody will even bat an eye at his murders. No matter how hard he tries, Patrick Bateman will never live in infamy. What makes this moment so terrifying to me is how true to life it really is. When notorious criminals are only given a slap on the wrist, it makes you wonder if the rich can ever be held accountable for anything. Takopi and American Psycho make such an interesting comparison directly because of their differing answers to the question of how monsters are made. Takopi states that unresolved trauma creates monsters, while American Psycho states that societal pressures are what causes monsters. Both are right. Persona 5 mostly focuses on the latter. This is because none of its main characters are ever alone. When Ryuji wants to hit Kamoshida again, Joker stops him. When Yusuke is convinced that his art journey has been ruined by Madarame, Joker helps lift him up. This logic applies to all of the Phantom Thieves, and is what ultimately allows the story to keep the mood light in spite of its harsh subject matter. None of the Phantom Thieves succumb to evil because each and every one of them is able to keep each other in check. This is not the case in Blue Archive, however. The Arya Squad are some of the most compelling characters of the Eden Treaty arc. These are characters who have committed numerous atrocities. They're responsible for comatosing Seiya, plotting to kill Nagisa, and doing all of this while betraying the trust of Mika and Makoto. They were convinced to do all of this out of hate forced on them by an abusive adult influence. When they become the protagonists of the story in its final fourth, it's after they find out that they've been taken advantage of, and all of them react in different ways. The most extreme form of this is seen with Misaki. Even just by looking at her design, you can tell that she's not like the other characters in this game. Her expression is deadpan, her jeans are torn, and bandages are wrapped around her arms. While most every character has a happy, funny, or sentimental memorial lobby, Misaki's is sad and depressing. These are details which clue you into her depression. As she already had these design details before this point of the story, it acts as clever foreshadowing for the abuse they've had to receive. If anything, that makes Azusa lucky. Azusa is a former member of the Arya Squad who got transferred to Trinity General School as their traitor. While Azusa had spent most of her time in Arius living and suffering, her time in Trinity is much different. Through the influence of Hifumi and Sensei, she chooses peace over war, ultimately allowing her to defeat them. With their hope lost, and a former member choosing her allegiance elsewhere, the Arya Squad is stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's then when Misaki nearly kills herself. When Azusa fights the leader of the Arya Squad, she receives a lecture. Saori is someone who believes that strength is what defines a person. Every time Azusa offers a counter-argument, Saori dodges it by calling her weak. However, Azusa is right. It's only through the power of trust, friendship, and kindness that Saori can be defeated. It's at that point that she has to acknowledge that she was wrong. Atsuko has been captured by her abuser, Misaki had to be convinced out of jumping, and Hiyori is swarmed with anxiety. These are all people who have become miserable through their circumstances. It's also when Saori learns the lesson that Azusa tried to teach her. Her best moments were never the ones where she got stronger. Her best moments were always the ones where she was able to spend time with her friends. Saori, however, could never accept this if she continued to be vilified. We see this with Mika, another character who's done similarly bad things and chooses vengeance after accepting that no one wants her to be redeemed. Mika is eventually saved from this fate, and it's because Saori was too. Before she defies her abuser, she confides in Sensei, a critical moment for her character arc. Sensei could see her solely for her actions and refuse her a second chance, but he instead acknowledges her guilt and gives her the opportunity to grow. Saori's abuser was Beatrice. Her goal was to distract people from her evil. She distracted the Arya Squad through hatred and warfare, and she plans to distract everyone else through a hatred of the Arya Squad's actions. Sensei doesn't do this. After all, his responsibility is to give his students infinite chances. It's his responsibility to make sure that they become good people. Takopi is tasked with this same responsibility, but is given it without the understanding of human psychology. His sin is shaped through how, by accepting the wishes of others, he's only causing a chain reaction of misery. When Takopi travels back to Shizuka's childhood, his amnesia acts as a test to see what he's learned. Of course, we, as the audience, know that he learned absolutely nothing. Or has he? When Takopi kills Marina, it's an accident. In the future timeline, he never got to understand why murder for someone else's sake is wrong. Here, Takopi gets to see it firsthand. The longer that Shizuka slips into darkness, the more Takopi begins to understand his sin. This is why he's only able to make Shizuka and Marina happy after finally accepting that he was wrong. The ending depicts two broken people who were shown darkness before they were mature enough to fight against it. They may be the perpetrators behind many terrible actions, but they're still victims of their circumstances. Their trauma is the result of an upbringing that had failed them. A show like Takopi is important because more people act like him than you'd think. Very few people are like Blue Archive Sensei, able to listen, console, and forgive. While giving these two a hug and saying that everything will be okay may not be enough to solve their problems, it will help them realize that they are not alone. Despite all of the trauma that Shizuka goes through, she almost never cries. It isn't until Takopi finally understands her, however, that the tears start streaming down. With Takopi finally achieving his mission, the timeline resets. Now, united by their connection to him, Shizuka and Marina find companionship through their shared trauma. Instead of furthering the cycle of hate, they instead choose to love. Without this ending, Takopi would be a compelling thriller, but it wouldn't be the life-changing work that it is. It's only through exploring their trauma and showing the good hidden within them that we can unpack the anime's message. Humans don't start evil. Instead of quickly vilifying someone, a bit of genuine kindness and understanding can go a long way, especially for a developing mind. I may dislike the execution of this ending and how suddenly it arrives, but it's brilliant in the case of showcasing this message. But why does Takopi have a good ending, while American Psycho has a bad ending? They both make their own statements on the human condition, and yet one is portrayed as redeemable, while the other is not. Blue Archive, once again, has the answer to this. In the Eden Treaty arc, Beatrice acts as the antithesis to who Sensei is. Sensei is someone who, regardless of any trauma he's received, always chooses to do the right thing. As an adult, he can't make excuses. He knows better than to take advantage of his students for his own selfish desires. When playing through this story, it was remarkable just how close Beatrice felt to a palace ruler in Persona 5. In Persona 5, every palace ruler is an adult who made the same choice as Beatrice. The only exception is Futaba's palace, one that follows saving a vulnerable and traumatized soul from a path of darkness. This is ultimately why I believe Persona 5 comes to the same conclusions that Blue Archive does. It's also why Takopi is a hopeful story, while American Psycho is a cautionary tale. We need to treat our youth with the same courtesy as Sensei. That way, we don't end up with another Patrick Bateman.